Shallowing the club doesn't need to be anything massively crazy and over-exaggerated, but some golfers might need to over-exaggerate it to be able to change what they currently do a little bit. I know I would fall into that category. My golf club definitely wants to steepen as I start down. It's caused by my backswing, and it's the backswing where we're going to be looking today mostly. And if we can get the backswing right, the shallowing will happen for free, as we've already said. But shallowing is essentially getting the centre of mass in the club to fall behind the hands as we would swing down. What we want to see, and this is what we see with all great players, is basically the club head sits behind the hands until basically you get the club head down level with the hands. We don't want to see this club head start to tip out in front of these hands until that moment in time. If we do, we are going to wipe across the golf ball. It's going to cause us contact issues. It's going to cause us to hit slice shots, pull shots, and the contact issues that we've already said. So we definitely want to try and feel that club head on the centre of mass in the shaft is behind the hands until we get to that point. Now, there's two things I want to talk to you about today, so make sure you keep watching to see both these things. The first thing is very much around rotation. Now, most people will come steep on the way down because of the way they rotate on the way back. And this is definitely where I fall into this category a little bit. We need to make sure that we can rotate our rib cage correctly and recruit our rotation correctly in order to be able to start that downswing sequence correctly to get that club to shallow for free. So what we need to focus on is the rib cage and belly button. We need them to feel like they really rotate as far as they can behind the golf ball. And in doing that then, the downswing should happen that the hips would lead laterally and the upper body will follow. So we get what's called lateral separation. We don't want this too much in tandem with each other. It definitely is following. There's definitely a left shoulder move that goes towards target and downward to create that pressure. That definitely is going to happen. But we definitely want to feel there's this lateral separation, and we try and stop the shoulder going too high too quickly, essentially. It's always going to be wanting to go up. So we try and feel there's a little bit of a kind of lead and a squeeze, if you like, just to be completely honest. And if you see this on my other content, you'll think I'm contradicting myself. I am not. In order to shallow the club, the more we add what we call right bend, the more that club works behind us. So the left shoulder going up, the right shoulder going down is definitely happening. But we want to create that by the pelvis leading out, which then creates this subsequent right lateral bend that creates the shallow in the club. So getting the correct rotation in the backswing, feeling that our rib cage rotates, is the first key to free shallowing. So making sure we get this depth of turn behind the golf ball and then letting the club do what it wants to do naturally from there is point number one. Let's try a swing where we try and really feel we get a lot of rotation. And felt sweet. It was a great shot. I definitely felt I had more conscious effort in rotating my backswing. Rotation for me doesn't come completely easy, and I'm sure it won't do for all of you guys out there. We have to work out rotation. So we're doing some exercises, putting the hands on our chest like this. I'm feeling that they point towards this camera or to the wall behind me. Is definitely where I go with some feels for rotation. The second thing I want to talk about is the wrist action. Practicing this little what I call snaking action with the wrists is key to getting the wrist to go into what we call more flexion. And as we flex our wrists, that club shallows. So again, if we can just practice the wrist feeling that we stay, what we would say is cupped here at the start and then change in direction into that little flex state, that little snaking action. I call it snake because it's like an S kind of bend of a following of that snake. The more we can practice that, the more we get the feeling of what these wrists should be doing in transition. So the detail will be at the top of the swing, this wrist bows or flexes this way. And as it does that, it shallows the club. So ideally what we're looking for is this big turn with this flexion of the wrist doing this. And the more we can encourage those two things, the more we get shallow in for free. And as I said, I'm all for free stuff. So we want to really feel that we can have that as almost a little waggle. And if you think about where your thumbs are pointing, which might be a way that resonates with some of you, the thumbs are going to be pointing away from me and then kind of behind me. And as it does that, you'll see there what it does to that shaft. I'm feeling that we could have that with what you would feel would be a big turn is kind of ideal for that shallowing action. So turning behind the ball and getting the wrist to work into this flexion state are two massive keys in shallowing the golf club. You might say, do we have to shallow the club? Well, no. If you have a steeper plane on the way down, you can still hit great shots. If you rotate through the ball well with a steep plane, what will happen is you'll hit pull shots and fade shots and slices. If you're happy with those shots, great. If you shallow the club, it gives you the option to hit straight shots, draw shots, obviously hooks and pushes as well. You'll get more natural speed when you shallow the club, get more torque, and you get more natural rotation. When the club's on a lower plane on the way down, you will then rotate through the golf ball more automatically. When you get the club steeper on the way down, your body will tend to shut down at contact, which makes the hands become more active. So a steep plane tends to lead to a body extending and shutting down. A shallower plane tends to lead to a body rotating and the hands being more passive. And again, we're only looking for it to shallow a slight bit. It doesn't need to shallow a huge amount. As a reference tool, if we had the ball here, I would want the butt of the club to point on the ball line or just above it. And this club to be pointing through the middle of your bicep-ish area as we get that club down to left arm parallel. Somewhere around there is absolutely perfect for what we're looking for a little shallow. If you had a more upright backswing, it might have to shallow more, but if it still shallows, it's still good. The more it shallows, obviously, the more we get that automatic rotation through the ball. So a good thing to do is just hit some small shots, trying to get that snake in action. And I'll start to get you the feeling of what you want those wrists to do. And then you're building that up into a longer swing, a long swing. So say if you did that for kind of 3 to 4 minutes and built the swing up gradually, so maybe 2 or 3 shots at each length of swing, and add like maybe 5 to 10 yards on in distance, and then put that into a full swing at the end, I guarantee that your wrist will be working better in order to help you shallow that club.